So I know I said that the next episode of the podcast would be on Polly Murray, but I gotta cheat. I just gotta do it because I'm so excited about a show that I just watched. It's called Lovecraft Country, and I just stumbled upon it on HBO Max, and it's such a crazy show. It's such a crazy show, and when I saw it, I just knew I had to talk about it with you guys. So I'm Dre Breezy, and this is the Breeze. So let's get this out the way. If you have not seen the first episode of Lovecraft Country, turn this motherfucking podcast off. Turn it off. Because I'm about to spoil all this shit. Okay? Everything's getting spoiled. And I have no regrets. So turn it off, watch the first episode, and then listen to the podcast. Because I don't want you guys to, I don't want to break you guys' hearts. I'm not a heartbreaker. I'm a lover. So, turn it off. I'll give you a couple seconds. Click some buttons. You good? Okay. So if you're still with us, Lovecraft Country is a show on HBO. It stars Jonathan Majors, and it also has Journey Bell Smollett. Smollett. Does anybody know how to pronounce her name? And it's just such a creatively created world. So it's set in the 1950s, and Jonathan Majors is a character. His name is Atticus Freeman, and he's a war veteran. And it starts off really in this really wild way. It starts off with a dream sequence, and the dream sequence is it's Atticus. He's like the main star, and he's on some type of battlefield, and we're I'm thinking it's the 1950s. It's the Korean War. It's what it looks like. But instead of them fighting, Korean people or other humans, they're fighting aliens. Like, and not like I'm talking about old school aliens, like War of the World aliens, with like the heads that look like ice cream cones. And then so all this craziness is going on, and out of nowhere a UFO comes down and beams down Jamie Chung. Jamie Chung is in all red body paint, and she's got on this gold bikini, and then all of a sudden her and Atticus start embracing each other. We don't know what's going on. And then boom, a monster shoots up out the ground. It's like big tentacle, crazy monster. Before anyone can even react, before I even know, like by this point in time, I'm like, what is happening? We don't know it's a dream, but I spoiled it for you guys. It's a dream. So the monster shoots up out the ground, and boom, all of a sudden the monster explodes, and behind the monster is Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson does like a couple poses, and like the patriotic music is playing in the back. And then all of a sudden, like boom, Atticus wakes up. And that's the opening scene of our show, which, I mean, it just turns me like upside down immediately. So then we get introduced to the world we in. It is like the 1950s, and Atticus is traveling he's in like the deep kind of Jim Crow segregated South, and he's traveling to Chicago. We find out on the bus ride to Chicago that his father has gone missing. And he really has an interesting conversation with one of the passengers in the bus, where she talks about how he's reading A Princess of Mars, which stars John Carter. And John Carter was a Confederate soldier, and she just seemed to be stuck on that point. Like, how could you be reading a book where the protagonist is a Confederate soldier? And he says something to the likes of, stories are just like people, they're imperfect, but we gotta love them anyway. So they're already touching on kind of those sensitive topics of race very early on in the show. So Atticus returns to Chicago to be greeted by his father's brother. George Freeman is his character's name, who is played by Courtney B. Vance, who many of you don't know is Angela Bassett's boo thing. Yep, that's her husband. And George Freeman is he owns a bookstore or some kind of I don't know, parchment store. I don't know what they had back then. And he also does what he calls or he has what he calls a safe Negro travel guide, which is exactly what it sounds like. And it's likened to the Green Book. I think they made a movie about it a couple years ago, which is basically a map for black people to tell them where it's safe to travel and what sundown towns they should avoid. George, actually, let me rewind a little bit. So on the bus ride, we find out that Atticus is going back to Chicago because his father is missing and he's going to Chicago to look for his father. So we're like, ooh, like what happened? Like, we don't even know what happened. Like, did he get kidnapped? Is he dead? Like, what's going on? But he gets to Chicago and George is like, well, here's the information I got. And the way they set up these people, like, it's so interesting watching this because these black characters are like, they just on it. Like they all got that kind of intelligence. It's like we about to solve shit. Like they problem solvers. Like we need more problem solvers like that. Like people that just be like, man, let's get the shovel. I don't. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, come on, you know that person to just be like, man, let's do it. Like, let's stop talking. Let's do it. So they're all kind of doers. So they like, we about to find them. Like, let's hit up this county. Let's hit up this county. Let's hit up this county. And before they can really do what they need to do, they're like, let's get some supplies first. Like, let's make sure we know all the information that we need to know to find your dad. And Atticus, in the meanwhile, is like, I actually got this letter from him that was talking about he knows where my mother is at. And I guess he's estranged, from his mother. He doesn't seem to have the best relationship with his father. And George turns away and is looking all like, oh, hell no. Like, he bringing up that girl. Like, damn, I thought, it's just something was off about the whole situation. And in the meantime, they're kind of introducing this supernatural element to the show. Like the way he talks about his mother and then the way they talk about, the supernatural and kind of and witches and stuff, the way they talk about it in this show, that shit is real. Like it's not the same way we think about it. Like, the spirits, like, you think of ghosts like with Whoopi Goldberg, like not the real shit. Like in this world, people, the voodoo, like that shit is real. So, we continue along and they're like, we about to get ready. And before we get ready, we get introduced to Letitia. Or is that her name? Letitia. They call her Letty. And Letty is Journey Smollett's character. And it reminds the character she plays in this show actually reminds me of a character that she played in a movie that I used to watch on DVD all the time, called The Great Debaters with Denzel Washington. And so she's just like this sassy girl, and we get introduced to her from this scene with her sister. Her sister's like a performer, so her sister's performing on stage, and she's like, "I ain't seen my sister since we used to sing back in church together." And then Letty's like, "And woo, that was a long time because when's the last time you been in church?" It was like that kind of back and forth. But as they're singing in doing the performance, it's like this weird kind of tension. Like there's just a weird kind of tension. Like they're trying to like upstage each other, and it just gets weird. And then as they break it down afterwards, like the band keeps playing, they break it down in the or they go down into the crowd to like, I guess, engage or dance with each other. And they start doing like little jabs, like little sibling jabs, like verbal fucking shots were fired, like bam, bam, like they were just bam and bam. And I mean, the root of it seems to be that Letty is a trash sibling. And she also didn't show up to their mother's funeral. So boom, she's in the mix. I guess we can kind of fast forward. There's still some more family dynamics, like some more drama. Like they run into Letty's brother. I mean, there's a whole two cop chases that happen in between them getting all in the car and then eventually them getting to the final scene. But I guess I should explain that. So they're essentially they have two roles in this episode. They're trying to find Tick's father, and they're also trying to fill out the guide for the Negro Guide. The first couple counties they go into, actually all the counties they go into, there's a very hostile presence towards black people being there. They're all in sundown towns. The first one, they try to eat at a diner, and the little bitch ass waiter he runs to the back and calls the manager and is like, these black people, I fear for my life. And so, the lynch mob comes, so it scares them out. And then the second time, they stop at a road because they're looking for this place called Artem, which is where they think his father might be. And so they're looking around and he's getting more frustrated. A cop rolls up on him and he's like, this is a sundown town and the sun sets in 7 minutes. If you don't get out of here in 7 minutes, you're dead. I mean, he just says, I'm gonna kill you. So this another chase scene ensues and this cop is chasing them out of town, and eventually they make it right out of the county line, right in the nick of time, sundown, and then kaboom, they hit a roadblock with a bunch of other racist cops, all with loaded shotguns. Now this is kind of the part that I want to talk about, this end scene. So these cops take our trio out of the car and they're like, we've had a recent spree of robberies and burglaries, and your guys are black, and we don't know who did it, but you guys are black, so you got to be guilty of something, and we're going to kill you. So they take them out to the woods to terrorize them and kill them. And then all of a sudden, as they're cocking the guns, about to it's over. I'm like, how is this over for these guys? And it's the first episode. This strange sound erupts from the forest around them. They in the middle of the forest. It's nighttime. They got the trio. They got the three characters face down on the ground. It's just a high tense moment. And then we hear the sound. The cops are like, whoa, what the hell was that? And the police chief is like, oh, it's nothing. It's wolves. Wolves, my ass. I mean, that was what I said. But one of the cops were also like, sir, officer, I don't think those were wolves. And was he right? Because out of nowhere, I think it was that dude. It just a monster, something with a big fucking mouth, just comes and eats him whole. Just whoosh, dead. The only thing that was left was his arm and his hand that was holding the flashlight. The camera pans to just the flashlight dropping on the ground in front of George's face. Then boom, chaos, craziness. These monsters, we don't know what the fuck they are, but the shit is real. These monsters come out of nowhere, just start eating and attacking everybody. George, Tick, and Letty somehow manage to escape to a cabin. Unfortunately, two of the racist cops go in there with them. I'm guessing this was probably the only abandoned cabin in the woods. So they go in there with them, and it's just this weird power dynamic starts playing. So everybody's trying to survive. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. These things are fucking eating people. George, being the smart, George was out there longer than everybody. So he realized that these monsters were impervious to light. And he also saw that they were fucking eating people. So he was like, maybe they're vampires. And so the cops still, for some reason, view the black people in the room as just as big of a threat as the human eating monsters outside. And so they send Letty out to run to the car as a possible escape plan to pull up to them and get them all out to escape. I forgot to mention, one of the cops is fucked up. One of the vampire monster things has tore his arm, shredded his arm up. He's barely holding on to the left side of his body. But he still got the energy to be racist. And so Letty runs out. So two things started happening at once. Letty runs out. She is booking it. I mean, she is Usain Bolting it to the car to get the keys to save everybody. Of course, a monster starts running after her. She defeats the monster through some old, she was like, I got this brain, I got this humanoid, this, Homo sapien brain that's smarter than you. And she was right. She tricked him into doing little stuff. She did a little trickery, and she got the keys, and so she gets in the car. At the same time where she's running to the car, George and Tick are noticing that the cop that I just said his arm is all mutilated and stuff is having some like Walking Dead, like is turning. So he's doing the whole like turning thing where his body's making all the weird sounds, body's doing mutilating in all these weird ways. And he has a gun and the other officer has a gun. And that's how they really were able to enforce all that bullshit. And then they're like, telling the officer that's not injured to shoot his partner because his partner's turning into something. They don't know what it's turning into, but it doesn't look pretty. It don't look friendly either. Of course, the cop is like, I ain't listening to y'all in words. And so before you know it, the mutilated police officer turns into the monster vampire, immediately turns to his partner and bites his entire face off. Bites the whole dude's face off. Dead. Dead. Completely dead. Like by this part of the episode, I'm like, I am watching this whole series, this whole season. You got me. HBO, you got me. Okay? So bites his whole face off. I'm like, well, shit. Tick and George, they ain't got no weapons, they ain't got nothing, they dead. The monster starts going towards them. Soon as he's about to eat them, Letty rams the car through the cabin and smush, smash, kaboom, right into the monster, knocks him out. Also, I think knocks George out because the next scene is them trying to find him in the rubble. He's all knocked out. The monsters are like, oh, well, you done knocked the building down. We got free buffet. And so they're swarming in. They get George in front of the headlamp. They find like 27 flares, like 20, a bunch of flares. I don't know why they had so many flares. Like, who needs this many flares? They threw all the flares out. The monsters are like, just wait till these flares go out. And I mean, it's just such a tense scene. We know something's got to give. Something does give. We hear this piercing light siren kind of sound that just acts as some kind of summoning call to the monsters. And they all disappear. I mean, that's all I wanted to talk about. A couple more things happen. I don't want to spoil the whole show for you, but I just went into the show thinking, oh, it's the 1950s. We got segregation. Like, it's about to be one of them shows, one of the roots, where you like, oh God, it sucks for black people. Another story about how it sucks to be black. And this show just completely took that and flipped it. It's not even about that shit. That's just the backdrop of the story. And the credits went, and I was like, I saw Jordan Peele, and it completely made sense. Like, oh, that makes sense. You see it in the way they kind of shape the characters. Like, the name of George's wife is Hippolyta, and Hippolyta is an avid stargazer. Her name is Hippolyta. And she, they have conversations about the stars. Like, black women in the 1950s, she had a telescope in her kitchen. I mean, it just was such a rich detail, about a character that nobody ever has the black female characters that like to look at the stars. Also, George and Hippolyta's daughter is a comic book artist. She draws comics for them. They read them out. I mean, it just has little details that shape and flesh out the story so much more. It was actually directed by Misha Green, who did Underground, that also had Journey Smollett in it. Yeah, y'all, I know this probably was this is just like a stream of consciousness in a lot of ways, but this show was so good. It was so good. It reminded me of the first time like I watched True Blood, or the first time I watched The Strain. I'm a big fan of that show too. So if you like kind of weird indie, I mean, I would liken it even to Stranger Things in a lot of ways. It kind of gave me that vibe. So if you're looking for something really, really binge worthy to watch, I would definitely recommend this. I think it comes on every Sunday, on HBO Max. I mean, we don't have TV anymore. So watch it whenever, you can. And thank you all again for listening to this kind of crazy random podcast. My name is Dre Breezy. And if you want to read about, actually wrote a book review, It's on my website, www.findthebreeze.com.